Of sermons about a road trip. We're going to be talking a bit about being lost and returning home. You know, in some ways, every time I enter a sanctuary, especially one where I've worshipped regularly, I feel like I'm coming home. Now I'm going to wreck the joint. Sorry. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Reverend Vicki Miller-Brendler. I'm an elder, former district superintendent, and from our annual conference a couple years ago, I retired, my husband married, to our home in Swartzwood Lake. And when we're home, we worship here among you. Larry's a member, we sing in the choir, and since we are retired, we're doing some traveling whenever we can. But so when we do come home, this sanctuary is now our home. We recently got back from about almost 6 weeks away in Maine, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and then back via the Maine coast and Acadia. Now we learned when we were away to be a little bit leery of the roads that a GPS would send us on. When, after the first week of our trip, Google Maps sent us on 50 miles of dirt roads through the wilderness of Maine, pulling a 34-foot trip. We weren't lost, technically, but it almost felt like we were. We had no cell service. We had tons of bumps, including a huge downhill that was like a washboard. We didn't pass any vehicles for miles and miles and miles. And luckily, we didn't hit too many other dirt roads, although I will tell you that some of the dirt roads in Nova Scotia were better than some of the really severely deteriorated paved roads there. For 4.5 weeks, we journeyed, heading away from home. And then I remember the day that I announced to Larry and the friends who were with us, this is the first day of our journey home. We are now officially heading home. Our friends groaned. But there was some good news in that too. There was some really good news in that too. Now we've been home just a little over a month now, and this is the fourth time I've had an opportunity to preach. Now the third time was on August 2nd, and I preached for Pastor Tillage over in Blairstown. And you know what? They're doing the same sermon series as we are here in Branchville on road trip. And I just happened to be preaching this sermon. And so I said to Pastor Nancy, you know, I'm writing this sermon, I'm preaching this sermon. When are you doing it in Branchville? And she said, August 25th. And I said, I'm scheduled to be liturgist. Do you want to switch? So I said, yeah. So what a blessing. I love to preach. So it's a blessing for me, and I hope it's a blessing for her. So late in July, I preached 2 Tuesday evening prayer clinics down at Campbell Memorial United Methodist Church in Woodbury, New Jersey. How many of you know where Woodbury, New Jersey is? Now, I didn't know where Woodbury, New Jersey was until I got there. I had never been to Woodbury, New Jersey before, but the GPS did a pretty good job that time of getting me there, at least the first week, especially because I left early, because I needed to go to Costco on the way to stock up. We'd been home 2 days exactly when I had to go preach at the prayer clinic. And, you know, we've been gone for almost 6 weeks. We were out of everything. So with coolers loaded with blue ice, I, got in my car, I headed out early, I hit the Flemington Costco, and I followed the GPS through the back roads winding over 100 counties, through Hopewell and Princeton, I-90, 195, 295, down through to Woodbury, and I made it. Phew. It's a long trip. It's too long, like 2.5 hours if you go straight. And with I think I left at 2 o'clock for a 7 o'clock preaching engagement. But I made it. But at 9 o'clock, when the prayer clinic was over, it sent me back a different route. 295, catching the Turnpike, and then to Route 18 in New Brunswick, and then River Road in Piscataway, and 287 to 206 North, and but it was a lot shorter. So, okay. But as I was driving past, one night the entrance to 195, when I was on the Turnpike, I thought, oh, 195. I always want to get together with my former associate, Christina Zito, who was my associate at Bridgewater when I was there. We were always saying, we gotta get together, we never get together. Next week, it's almost her birthday, the day before her birthday when I go down next week. Oh, we can have lunch together, that'd be great. I'll have to call her. So I thought, great, I'll do that. So the next week I called her, I made the arrangements. The next Tuesday, I headed out early, I put her address in Google Maps, I go down, I get there, it sent me to the wrong place. I know I was at the wrong place because when I went and I knocked at the door, nobody was home. I was confused. The house said 20, her number was 20. I'd been there before. This is the place that the program told me that she lived. But I looked closely at the map on my phone and I noticed that it said that Eden Court was actually on the next road over. When I scrolled in, and then I guiltily remembered that she had texted me that morning that sometimes the GPS sends people to the wrong street. Now, not only was this a different road, but there was no direct way to get from where I was to where I needed to be. You had to go out of the court I was in and here and there and everywhere around to get to the court where she lived. Because she lives in an over 55 community down in Jackson, and all the townhouses are tan, and they all look alike, except that the doors are different colors, and some have one-car garages and some have two-car garages. So I backed out of the driveway, and I tried to retrace my steps, and then I got even more turned around and confused. And I can tell you, I am a little map challenged to begin with. Right, honey? Yeah. So, finally, I just called her and I said, help, I am lost. And we laughed together, and she found out where I was, and she helped direct me to where I needed to be. Now, it wasn't like she didn't give me instructions to start with, Now, we all have at least one funny story, at least now that it's over, about getting lost on a road trip, right? At least one. I'm not alone, right? Tell me I'm not alone, right? Okay, shoot, okay, good. When my girls were little, before we have 4 daughters, sorry, and I have 4 daughters, they're all grown now, but I would I would drive around. I love to take back roads and find out where they go. We'll pass the road, I'll say to Larry, gee, I wonder where that road goes. He goes, who cares? I go like, I care. I want to know where it goes. I'm like, what? So I'm an explorer. But anyhow, so I would put the girls in the car sometimes. We'd have to go to, like, we live in Tewksbury, we'd have to go to Washington or something like that. So, like, I just get in the car and drive. Like, I know the general direction that Washington is from Tewksbury. Like, so I would just drive. And after we drove it around a while, the girls would say, Mommy, are we lost? And I would say, no, we're just exploring. Now, I wasn't lying. I knew the general direction of where I was heading, just not the particulars of the road that I was on at that particular moment in time, right? I did really enjoy and do very much appreciate GPSs. Absolutely. Although after I preached this in Blairstown, they told me, don't use Google Maps, use Waze. I haven't tried it. I may. Who knows? Anyhow, but there are lots of ways of getting lost. Other ways, rather than just geography, of getting lost in this world too. Many of us have experienced them as well. Some more deeply and profoundly than others. The younger brother in Jesus' parable honestly would have had very little opportunity in his life to ever be really in charge of anything had he stayed home all of his working life, because he would have been first working for his father and then for his elder brother. For younger sons didn't inherit in his culture. Most of everything would have gone to his elder brother, and so in some ways, for him to be bold and ask for inheritance to go make a life in a different place was try to be independent. In some ways, it might have been an act of courage, even if misguided, and certainly got way off track when you asked, and he certainly got way off track living a life that was unhealthy and counterproductive. And the father was gracious to give him anything to go and to begin. And it seems that maybe things went okay for him for a time, until the money ran out. It says, the Bible story says he squandered it. Maybe his investments or his business venture failed. Maybe he just lost it. We don't know. But we do know that when the money ran out, when he didn't do well, he was left destitute. And he was left with a despised work to do. Feeding the pigs. You know, that was like a cursed job for a good Jewish man to do. You know, pigs are a cursed animal for a Jew. They won't eat them, they won't touch them. That is a real curse. So for a good Jewish man to have to be feeding pigs was the lowest of the low jobs. Hungry. Having to do this despised work, he realizes that even the pigs are better off than he is. Certainly his father's hired servants are better off than he is. And so he comes to himself. He awakens to the realization that he has been a fool, that he must change, that he has to return home and seek the forgiveness of his father for squandering the grace that his father has already extended him, that he didn't need to extend him in the first place. His father didn't owe him an inheritance in the first place. So his father's been gracious already. And the son has squandered that already. So he has to seek forgiveness even as he returns home in shame. And he's no longer worthy to be called a son, but rather will be content with just being able to be within the protection of his father's estate as a hired servant. And so he turns around and turns away from all that has kept him away from his true self and turns towards home, where he knows his father is, where we know his father is watching and waiting for his return. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know that his father hasn't written them off the books completely. We know it because we have the Word. And Jesus tells us that his Father sees him from a distance and runs to him, embraces him before he can even speak, welcomes him with a kiss, despite his son's protests that he is no longer worthy to be called a son. The father orders a grand welcome, a ring, a robe, a feast. Our daughter Rachel calls herself our prodigal daughter. She made some mistakes when she was younger, as so many young people do. She was working as a bartender in Hoboken, New Jersey, a swinging place for 20-somethings after graduating from college. We knew she didn't particularly like living at home again after the freedom of college living, but we were really surprised one day when we came home to find that she and a couple of her friends had rented a truck and they moved her furniture, clothes, and even her TV, which was our living room TV at the time, into that truck and they were heading out the door as the rest of the family arrived home. She didn't quite make it out in time before we got home. And she was off to explore a new phase of her life. After a few months, we knew she was in trouble. We offered for her to come home, but she wasn't happy with the conditions, so she stayed away. And she was embarrassed and ashamed of the mess she'd made of her life. Repeatedly over the next few months, we offered until finally she hit rock bottom, losing her driving privileges due to too many overdue parking tickets. This time when we offered help, she was willing to come home, to be accepted and loved as a daughter again, turning her life around and beginning again. Thanks be to God. She left Hoboken and really became a new person. She began working on her master's degree in counseling, and now she helps others avoid the mistakes that almost derailed her life. God works in mysterious ways indeed. But not every prodigal is acted out physically by moving out. Sometimes we're prodigals in our relationships with each other or in our relationship with God. Especially maybe in our relationship with God, we absent ourselves from paying attention to God, from nurturing our spiritual lives. 3 pastors were serving in a community not far from here. They're having dinner. One said, I've been having trouble with bats in my loft and in the attic of my church since the start of the summer. I tried everything. Noise, spray, cats, nothing seems to scare them. Another one said, same here, I've got hundreds in my belfry and in the narthex attic. I've even had the place fumigated and they won't go away. And the third said, I baptized all of mine and met the members of the church and I haven't seen one since. Oh dear. We laugh, but we live in a culture that often puts a lot of things before church. Shopping, sports, family outings, sleeping late, hobbies, etc. Because there are so many things to do, so little time in which to do them. So many places to go, and for some, the expendable income to go there. So many ways in which to do things that can make you smarter, more beautiful, more physically fit, that we sometimes forget that in addition to being physically, mentally, and emotionally fit, we must also exercise our spiritual muscles to be whole as well. Being physically and mentally fit is important. But if we're to be whole and healthy human beings, then we must also exercise our spiritual muscles through prayer, worship, study, the reading of scripture, times of personal witness, and through living out our faith through mission and ministry to those in need. It's not hard to get away from the spiritual disciplines that help keep our relationship with God fresh and close. It's easy to be influenced by the things that lure us away from faithfulness to God and tend to make us stray from the community of faith which seeks to hold us close. It's effortless, literally, to get out of the healthy habits of life, both physical and spiritual, especially in the lazy, hazy days of summer. We often have a tendency to leave the God who loves us and strike out on our own, to seek our own fortunes, even as the younger brother in this parable in the scripture. The younger son is a radical example of messing up his life. Most of us don't get quite into that pit of the existence that he discovered, but sometimes we find ourselves in a funk with life and we're not quite sure how to get out of that funk. It's comforting. It's comforting to remember this parable of Jesus. Not just for the times we mess up or the times we get lost, or for what it means to be a prodigal, but to once again recall the amazing love and grace of God that continues to embrace us as we return to right relationship. We also go through spiritual highs and spiritual lows. The The thing is to come to ourselves again, even as the Son did, to remember that we need to go home, even in the role of the servant. But then we, like the Son, are so often surprised by the grace that is shown by the loving parent God, and we're welcomed because we're all children of God. I wonder at the love of God for all his children who mess up their lives in so many ways, causing heartache for themselves, for those who love them, and even for our global society at a larger scale. I marvel at the depth of God's love for all those who fail to be virtuous and loving and positive influences in the world. Not only Christians, but Jews, Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, and others who seek after God in their own ways. God keeps watching for us, waiting for us, even as the loving Father in the parable, who sees us coming from far off, waiting for us, even as the Father runs to meet us. I know that the seeking love of God in Christ continues to reach out for those who are trying to come to themselves and realize who they are as God's children, who we all are, both the elder and younger brothers, learning how to love. It's a lesson that we need to live in our lives each day in our multicultural, multiracial, multi-religious state, like New Jersey, where we live. It is something that we need to learn as well in dealing with our own family situations in today's world. What a wonderful example God gives us. Many of you know that I grew up in a multiracial family. My parents adopted 2 Korean American children and 2 multiracial black-white children growing up. So I had the privilege and honor to grow up in a very multiracial, multicultural family. And we made sure that we tried to learn about all the cultures of our family. But I remember a time when my brother Mark, who is African American and white, that he was struggling in his relationship with my folks who were white. And, you know, we had this distinct challenge of growing up black in this multicultural family with white parents. And although they really tried to have him be mentored by African American friends, he still had a hard time. They had a hard time, as most of us who are white do, understanding the pervasive nature of racism and the reality of white privilege in our great nation. And as we gathered for Easter dinner that year, it was truly a resurrection moment. Something special happened in that relationship that had been strained, and it was healed between my brother and my parents. And as we relaxed after dinner, I penned the words of the song that I then gave to him to set to music. He's a wonderful, very famous, actually, at this point, church musician. And he designed it, and he said it especially for our daughters to sing at their high school choral concert that year. It's called Come Home, is the name of the song. And the words go like this: there's a place of welcome. There's a place to be the person you really are inside. Your spirit is set free. Words of care and kindness are always near our lips. There's a place of inner peace, acceptance and the love to set free. I'm not going to sing the whole thing. Called home. Come home, come home. A voice is calling, the journey is long, and as we are able, we'll sing our song. Come home, come home. When we come together, not often, this we know, family, it's a part of us no matter where we go. Sometimes the flame burns brightly for friends and those we love, but there are times the fire burns low, when then flames are fanned and embers turn to joy. Come home, come home. A chance to be real, a time to heal, all revealed. Come home, come home. Through sorrow and gladness, we'll still walk on, and as we are able, we'll sing our song, Come Home. Return home, Jesus says, to those who are lost on the roads of life. Come to yourself and come home to me. For we serve a God who seeks the lost, heals the wounded, forgives the offender, and gives hope to those who are in despair. Return home to a community of faith that calls us to do the same in the name and for the sake of Jesus Christ.